Step into a world where the air hums with tension, where every glance is a gauntlet thrown, and yet you stand as the unshakable pillar amid the fray, not because you roar, but because your silence carries the weight of 1,000 storms. Stoicism, carved from the minds of titans like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, isn't a philosophy of noise or empty swagger. It's a blueprint for forging a presence so absolute that your enemies tremble before you've even parted your lips. This isn't about petty intimidation or fleeting bravado. It's about cultivating a deep, unassailable strength that radiates through every fiber of your being, a strength that speaks when words would only cheapen it. To make your enemies fear you without uttering a single syllable, you must become a living embodiment of Stoic resolve, a man whose very existence defies their grasp. Begin with the bedrock of self-mastery, because a soul that bends to no one is a force no one can fathom. Life is a relentless siege, betrayals from those you trusted, venomous whispers creeping through the shadows, calculated strikes meant to topple you. The common man stumbles here, erupting in anger or crumbling under the weight, desperate to shout his defiance or plead his case. But you choose a different path. Epictetus, a former slave who rose to philosophical greatness, etched this truth into the ages. There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will. When your enemy hurls their worst, perhaps a colleague undermining your work, a friend turning traitor, or a rival spreading lies to tarnish your name, don't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. Stand there, shoulders squared, gaze piercing through their facade, your face a mask of granite. Let their words crash against you like waves on a cliff, dissipating into nothing. That stillness isn't passivity. It's a deliberate act of power, a refusal to dance to their tune. They'll prod, they'll taunt, expecting you to break, to give them a crack to widen. But you offer only silence, a silence that grows heavier with every passing second, a void they can't fill or fight. They don't know what's behind it, whether it's contempt, calculation, or something darker, and that uncertainty begins to claw at their nerves. Your refusal to engage doesn't just disarm them, it turns their aggression into a mirror of their own weakness, and that reflection is what they fear most. Now, armor your mind long before their arrows fly. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome and master of his own soul, didn't wait for calamity to catch him off guard. He sought it out in the quiet hours. Each morning he'd sit with the specter of ruin, death, betrayal, the collapse of all he held dear. This wasn't despair, it was premeditatio malorum, the Stoic ritual of facing the worst in your imagination, so the real thing loses its bite. Take this practice and make it yours. Before the day begins, close your eyes and summon their moves. Picture the rival who's plotting to outshine you, the friend who's sharpening a knife for your back, the stranger who would revel in your downfall. See their sneers, hear their accusations, feel the sting of their schemes. Then, one by one, strip those visions of their power. Decide how you'll stand when it happens, not with panic, not with rage, but with a calm that borders on eerie. When the moment arrives, say, a public attack on your reputation or a sudden ambush in a meeting, you're not the man caught blindsided scrambling for words. You're the one who's already walked that road, who's felt the heat and come out cold as ice. They see it in your eyes. You've been there, you've survived it, and you're still here, untouched. That foresight doesn't bellow its strength. It looms like a shadow they can't shake. Your enemies thrive on surprise, on catching you weak, but you've stolen that from them, and the unknown depth of your preparation makes their hands tremble. Move beyond their games entirely. Stoicism doesn't linger in the muck of petty feuds. Seneca, who faced exile and death with the same steady hand, scorned the idea of wasting energy on anger or revenge. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. Let your enemies sling their mud. Perhaps they're whispering rumors to your peers, sabotaging your work behind closed doors, or gloating over some small victory they think they've scored. Don't stoop to their level. Don't dignify their noise with a response. Instead, pour your focus into what endures: your craft, your purpose, your rise. If they're trying to drag your name through the dirt, let them waste their breath while you stack achievements that dwarf their efforts. Picture a rival spreading lies about your competence. Don't waste time arguing. Deliver results so undeniable that their words turn to ash. Your life becomes a testament, a silent rebuttal that grows louder with every step you take. They'll notice the pattern. Their attacks don't slow you, don't scar you, they fuel you. Every barb they throw sharpens your edge. Every pit they dig becomes a stepping stone. That relentless advance isn't loud, but it's deafening in its own way, and it plants a cold realization in their minds. They're not fighting a man they can break. They're up against a tide they can't stop. Ground yourself in Stoicism's unforgiving core. Virtue isn't a soft cloak. It's a shield and sword rolled into one. Courage to face their malice head on. Justice to keep your hands clean while they wallow in filth. Wisdom to see their tantrums for the childish ploys they are. Temperance to hold your fury in a vice grip. This isn't about looking good. It's about being unbreakable. Imagine a moment of confrontation. Your enemy leans in, voice dripping with venom, thinking they've pinned you down, a promotion stolen, a trust shattered, a wound they've opened. Most would snap back, curse, or shrink. You don't. You lock eyes, unblinking, your breath even, your stance rooted like an oak. They're fishing for a sign, fear, frustration, anything to feed on, but you starve them. Your silence isn't empty. It's loaded with the weight of Stoic centuries, a quiet that echoes with the resolve of men who faced empires and laughed at fate. They can't tell if you're plotting, dismissing them, or simply beyond their reach. And that ambiguity burrows into their skull. A man who doesn't need to bark his strength, who doesn't flinch under their glare, isn't just a threat, he's a puzzle they can't solve. That unsolved riddle becomes their nightmare, because they're left guessing what you're capable of, what you've already endured, what you might do without ever tipping your hand. Strip away the last shred of their leverage. Stoics don't fear the things that keep others away. Marcus Aurelius, reigning over a crumbling Rome, wrote in his tent at night, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He lived with death at his shoulder, knowing all things glory, pain, enemies turn to dust. Embrace that same clarity. Your enemies might wield temporary weapons, gossip, sabotage, fleeting winds, but you've got something they can't touch, a perspective that dwarfs their schemes. They're scrapping for scraps while you're anchored in a truth they'll never fathom. Nothing they do lasts. Nothing they take matters. Let them exhaust themselves, flailing against a man who doesn't quail at loss, who doesn't blink at ruin. Picture them pacing at night, replaying your silence, wondering why their best shots leave no mark. Over weeks, months, years, they'll feel it, their plans unravel, their venom fades, and you remain a constant, unyielding figure they can't erase. You don't need to threaten or boast. Your presence does it for you. Every step you take, every blow you shrug off, every moment you refuse to bow builds a legend they can't unwrite. That's the Stoic secret, not a word spoken, not a fist raised, but a life lived so fiercely, so fearlessly, that your enemies dread the quiet more than any shout. They don't fear your voice, they fear the man who doesn't need one, the man who's already won the war they're still fighting.